This is 24 in 42. Hello and welcome to 24 in 42. I am your host, Jason Waltz, and today we get to sit down and talk with Ian Cameron Esslemont, co-author of the Gargantuan series that happens to be one of my favorites. And it's been my pleasure to meet our guest today in person at World Fantasy, had dinner together, and also was very grateful that he partook in this little book I put out a couple years ago on how to write heroes, and really grateful to you joining us here today. If you wouldn't mind just saying a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Jason. Thanks for the invite. So I'm Canadian, but I've lived in the U.S. for about 20 years and gone to university in both countries and taught literature and creative writing in both countries and traveled quite a bit in Asia, taught English abroad in Thailand and Japan, and always had a passion for fantasy. So I write mostly in the fantasy genre, what some people call epic fantasy, but I'm not sure that that really applies. Perhaps in the broadest sense. But I guess that's about it.
All right. Well, I think viewers are starting to get used to the program now. They know that I've shared 16 of the 24 questions with you. The other 8 are a little tongue-in-cheek, not too difficult to answer on the spot. We'll see how we do here. I'm going to start our timer. All right, sir. Question number 1. What color do you write in?
What color?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my goodness. I guess mostly blue. And I'm seeing a lot of blue behind you as well.
That is true. Maybe I should reconsider blue shirts.
Yeah, blue and blue.
I am a character-oriented reader and writer. And I also happen to teach a character writing class once a month. So many of my questions are character oriented. Starting with, how do you give depth to a character, and do you treat first, second, and third level characters differently?
Yes, I think you probably are forced to have to treat them differently because it's all about what you would call airtime. You know, the main characters get more attention, more time on the page. The minor characters therefore have less time on the page. So you have more opportunities to explore the main characters. And I think to add depth is to think about them as real people with contrary urges and self-delusions and all of these little quirks and efforts that we like to ignore, but if you write it on the page, the reader will pick up on these things and see where the characters are lying to themselves or to others. And I think that's how you can really add a lot of human depth to the character.
Those little idiosyncrasies are tellers. Yes. How do you if a third level character is only in one scene or shows up extremely randomly and rarely, but obviously is necessary for some purpose, how do you make them? They don't get the depth, the amount of space, like you said, to give them depth, but how do you make them matter, I guess?
Yeah, that's tough. And there are crutches, of course, available to authors, like, as you said, like little quirks or funny things to make them memorable. But that's just sort of I think that's a shallow effort. I think you can come in and even if they are what you would call a brief moment in the novel, you can take the time to give that individual as much due care as necessary. Don't treat them brusquely, and don't just run over them to get to the next important thing. And I think if you take your time, they will shine.
Good point. Okay. Did you grow up a city or a country kid? And when you were out and about playing your adventures, was it just you or did you have friends?
Mm. Well, I grew up in the late 60s and 70s and mid early 70s. So at that time, we were free range kids. And we could just go wherever you wanted. And I grew up in Winnipeg near the south edge of it. And so I'm sort of both
Okay.
city and country because I would go out all the times on my bike or on walks out in the woods and along the river. And so I enjoyed both worlds.
Hmm.
And there was a pack of us, of course, kids my age, and we all ran around, built forts, and had wars, and did all those sort of things.
Did you read in the woods?
I read mostly indoors. I mean, it's hard to read outside in Winnipeg. It's
Good point.
maybe for a few months you can, but after that it gets too cold. Um, um, but yeah, I was reading all the time then. I was consumed by fantasy and science fiction, which became my love.
Okay. Good. We'll circle back to that when we get to your favorite books in a little bit here. When you're working on a project, what's your timeline like from when you conceive the idea, if it needs any research, rough drafts, until you say this is ready for submission?
Mm. Well, contractually, it's a year. I am under obligation. I've been slowing down, unfortunately, but usually it's about a year,
Okay.
and it's longer now. But I have other projects that aren't under contract, and I'm doing lots of research on them, and they have a much longer timeline.
Okay. Uh, what would have been the fastest thing, maybe, just as an example of from initial idea to final product?
Um, hmm. I think Blood and Bone um,
Huh.
went very swiftly. I had a really firm idea of what I wanted to achieve there, and it rolled and it came out very quickly and very smoothly.
Okay. That's a good ready reference. All right, I'm looking at it up there on the shelf. um, when you're writing, what assails your ears?
Sales.
I chose that word specifically.
Yeah. I used to listen to, I'd have music playing a lot in the background, but now the house is more crowded. And so I tried earphones, but my hearing isn't very good. And so I don't like being cut off from the world that way, the way
Okay.
headphones and earphones do. Um, so I prefer now I'm writing in without any music anymore. I'm sort of trying that out, and
Okay.
we'll see how that works.
So this is new, a new effort. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I like this answer because there's a wide range that I've gotten so far.
Mm.
On this question, this is one of the eight you don't know about. I usually have an either or that I present my choice, but I'm going to give you both since you're so heavily well traveled. I usually ask if you could, would you live in a yellow submarine? Or I ask if you could, would you follow the yellow brick road? I would like to know your answer to both.
I think you can do both. I think you can follow the yellow brick road in your yellow submarine.
I like it. Which of your characters would you like to hang out with?
Oh my. I don't know if I'd like to hang out with any of them. They're all very vexing and irritating people. I don't think I would like many of them. Um, there's some I would certainly like. Maybe say Whiskey Jack, for example. The problem is he's very quiet. So hanging out with him would be like being alone.
uh, you always have to generate the conversation and keep it going.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. And others are just murderous psychopaths I want nothing to do with. So
I'm actually going to ask an aside. Whose character is Iron Bars? I forgot.
Um, I think Steve made him up out of a list of personnel I had for the Crimson Guard,
Okay.
and he took Bars and then developed him.
Okay. I've always been fascinated by him. I would love to see another story or two about him.
Yeah, that's true. I like him too. Yeah.
What nonfiction do you enjoy reading, and do you have any titles that you could share with us
Mm.
or recommend?
Hmm. Um, well, interesting. I'm reading mostly nonfiction these days because I'm doing a lot of research, and I really enjoy histories. I really love reading histories, and when I was in the PhD program at the University of Minnesota, um, I was doing literature and I was looking at travel literature. It's always been a very strong interest of mine.
Okay.
So I read a lot of travel literature, and I think it's certainly underappreciated, but it is a major genre of literature. And once you get into it, you can see it's very broad
Hmm.
and has played quite an important role in the last couple hundred years, certainly in the West.
Okay. Can you
Um,
share an example, a title example, or an author?
of really good, very well written, beautiful travel literature in the genre. Um, I guess I would say Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's Airman's Odyssey,
Okay.
the French author, an early pioneer airman who flew post from France to Tunisia and Algeria.
Okay.
And he crashed a couple times in the Sahara.
Huh.
And out of his philosophical musings came the children's classic, The Little Prince.
Really? Okay. I knew the name. I just wasn't putting it together. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting inspiration for that. Okay. Titles, do you find them challenging or do they come to you easy? And where in your creation process do they usually arrive?
Um, interestingly, titles have so far been pretty easy for me. I usually have the title first.
Okay.
Uh, and that's been the case for almost every one of my novels so far.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it defer if it's a shorter piece at all? Do those improve more? No. Okay.
I mean, I don't think that they necessarily served in guiding the work. I think that I already sort of knew what I was going to do, so I think the title came out of what was
Okay.
going to be the content. But with my publishers, I have had a couple battles. For example, Orb, Scepter, Throne was considered a no-go for a title. But in that battle, I stuck to my guns. And I said,
Okay.
no, it's fine. We're going to keep it. And we went back and forth a fair bit on that.
Interesting. What was their argument? Just that it didn't roll off the tongue, or?
That it wasn't a grammatical phrase. It was
Oh,
just three words.
okay. uh, Breakfast time. It's bread heavy, but what would you choose? Waffles, French toast, pancakes, crepes, or bagels?
Oh my goodness. I would love French toast, but I don't know if I could pack it on like that. So what I'm having usually is a bagel.
Okay. Anything on it?
Yeah, butter and jam.
Okay. I'm a butter and honey on my bagels, but
Yeah, yeah.
all right. So, would you live in any world that you have created?
Mm. Well, I suppose a lot of authors, they're seen as writing their fantasy because they yearn for another period or another time. But I tell you, the world that Steve and I have created is pretty brutal. I don't think I'd last a minute there. I think I'd die pretty quickly.
I'm actually very interested in this question because I'm finding the majority of the authors wouldn't live in their worlds. There's been very few that would live in a world. So That's
Oh, that's interesting
yeah,
because usually the perception is that, well, they made this stuff up because it's all wish fulfillment and they want to be in another time and another place.
right.
But no, I mean, if you look back on, say, medieval times or the classical times, it's pretty brutal, you
Yes.
know?
Yep, exactly. It's nice to have indoor plumbing and a little bit of air conditioning sometimes.
Yeah, 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 and not be statistically part of the 99% who's getting the boot crushed on them.
Right. Dead by what, 34 or something like that? Yeah. All right. Who do you think writes the characters you most enjoy reading?
Mm. Of course, I love Steve's stuff. Of course, Steven
All right.
Erickson. Um, but in the fantasy genre, and science fiction, the genres writing, I've said this before, but I really admire the writing of Ian Banks.
Okay.
Um, he's fantastic. I love his characters, and of course, I enjoy classical literature, and that there's just magnificent stuff.
Throw a name out.
The classics. Um, well, I'm old school in a way, and so Conrad,
Okay.
Melville.
All right. Melville. All right. That's one of my favorite questions in my whole series because there's a ton of names. I would like to see what characters really connect with the authors that I'm interviewing. All right, now we're to that writing class that I mentioned. I invite you to guest speak, but you are allowed one sentence only. What is your one sentence of writing advice to my audience?
Mm.
You can expound here, but
Um,
there you only get one sentence.
okay, okay. Well, that one sentence, I guess, would be um, just finish what you start.
Yes.
I mean, that's 90% of the battle is just finishing.
Yep.
That alone, once you've accomplished that, you are really well on your way.
Yep. It's a battle I struggle with, but I hear you.
Yeah, and I still do as well. It's tough, Life intrudes.
Mm-hmm. What is the best thing you think you have ever spent money on to further your own writing?
Everything.
Hmm.
Um, all of the money I spent on higher education, studying archaeology, studying the humanities, studying literature, and then all the money I spent
Okay.
traveling through Southeast Asia. It broadened me. I exposed me to other cultures, and that just in all of that experience, in I think enriches one's writing just so much. So I
I
encourage
agree.
aspiring writers to travel, and I don't mean just go to France. I mean like really challenge yourself. Go
Okay.
to I don't know, Mauritania or or some Laos, let's say, like a really very different culture, and see how that there's so many ways to live out there, so many different ways to live.
Right, and challenge our preconceived ideas of what it's like. Yeah,
Yeah.
good point. And you can see it in the depth of your work. It is evident that there is a roundness and a completeness. I would think I know the answer to this one based on actually some of what you just said, being so well exposed in the world. Do you think it makes your writing for you, more difficult or a little easier if you feel emotions strongly?
Ah, well, I don't know about other authors, but for me, I mean, I have to feel the emotion.
Okay.
Um, you know, I have to feel when I'm writing, I will tear up. And when a scene is working and it's funny, I will laugh, and I have to. If a character tells it, if I write a joke that a character's telling and it's like, and I don't think it's funny, then it's out. And I have to laugh
Okay.
because if I don't laugh, then the reader isn't going to find it funny.
Right.
I think.
Right. They're probably grown.
Or growing, yeah. Of course, some characters, that's their whole point, right? They can't tell jokes. And so, of course, their humor always falls flat, but that's part of their character.
Correct.
It shouldn't be a fault of the author.
Can the moment of trauma or joy be so overwhelming though that it gets in the way of writing for you?
It's possible. The point though is to get it down though, and to explore it
Okay.
in your own fashion as
Which
best you can.
which helps goes back to your being well traveled because when you're exposed to multiple peoples, you see multiple reactions that are different than maybe you have personally experienced. So it helps. Um, yeah, I envy you on that. I'm not very well. Mexico and Canada is my exposure to the North America. Is it? All right, here we go. Now I'm going to be showing these on the screen when in the final video, but what were your three favorite books pre-18?
Ah, hmm. Pre-18. Well, I so I don't know how I found it. I don't maybe in the library or bookstore, but of course I stumbled upon the Daw reprints of the Conan series
Okay.
with the Frazetta covers. Perhaps it was the Frazetta covers that caught my eye. And I just fell in love with Howard's Conan and his Hyperborean world.
Sure.
And I gobbled that stuff up. And of course, it's been an immense influence.
Yeah.
And I also really remember a book about, I think it was called The Living Fossil.
Okay.
And it was about the discovery of the coelacanth, how it just sort of turned up one day, a corpse of a coelacanth in the Indian Ocean. And they found it, and they only knew this fish from 300 million year old fossils. And yet here it was, still alive, still surviving. That just fascinated me so much.
And you read that as a teen?
Yeah, I was a young guy, certainly
Interesting.
because it was a kid's book, or one of
Okay.
them, for science for kids sort
Okay.
of thing.
All right.
Yeah. And the third, I guess, believe it was early enough. I came across Tim Powers' The Drawing of the Dark,
Okay.
which is just a wonderful piece of fantasy literature, where he takes a real historical moment, the Siege of Vienna,
Okay.
and then infuses it with fantasy and magic, and makes both work. And there's
Okay.
wonderful humor in there too.
I'm only a Tim Powers anthology reader, so short stories. I've never tackled his series at all.
This was a standalone, very slim novel.
Okay. All right. Interesting combination. When you're all done writing for the day, are you exhausted, just need a hot bath and a nice drink, or are you ready to rumble and get out of the house?
I'm pretty much done. I write late,
Okay.
so it's sort of like my get it out of my system at the end and then crash.
Oh,
Sort of.
okay. I think that's the first interview that's been a later in the day writer. Okay. Has that always been?
Yeah, maybe it's a bad habit, and maybe it's too late now for me. But I think it goes back to my grad student days
Okay.
when I did all my work till 2 a.m.
All right. What is the most difficult thing you have ever written?
Mm. Uh, Dialogue, trying to imitate
Okay.
set patterns in dialogue. That was very, very tough. And I have a really hard time with physical descriptions. Getting physical descriptions across in writing always seems awkward to me. And when I read it in other works, it often seems forced and clumsy.
Huh.
And so I wince when I think of that. And I want to find a way around that clumsiness and make it seem smooth and unforced.
Sure. Do you feel that you've done it occasionally or improved over time?
I think maybe I've improved a little bit over time. I think I shied away from it early and I wouldn't dwell on it. I think I'm more confident now. I'm more willing to spend more time on it.
I have to chuckle a second because when I first started Steve's series, I think I read your first book, Night of Knives, after is right or is either before or after Midnight Tides. So I'd already read four or possibly five of his series, and I read your Night of Knives, and you're distinctly different writing styles. But I still remember you made me look up words. Like I think at the seventh time I was ticked. I'm like, okay, I like learning words, but what the heck? I keep having to look up words, and I thought I knew words, you know. So, but now when I read it, I mentioned to you I've reread that. I've read that three times now. This I distinctly remember the second time I read it. I'm like, what was I looking up? I know all these words, but I know the first time I read it, I looked up six or seven words and was getting ornery. But
Well,
go ahead.
I'm surprised you weren't looking at words when you were reading Erickson's stuff.
I'm sure I was, but it was random instead of. It seemed like yours hit so quick, back to back to back, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be a long book.
Yeah. Lots of charging around to the dictionary. Um,
Yep.
well, I apologize for breaking the dream there and forcing you out of the narrative.
It was good for me, and obviously I learned them and retained them because the next time I read it, there was no challenges in that aspect. So,
Mm.
but I was trying to replay what you said about dialogue and character description, and I don't. Right now, I can't think of any examples where I ever stumbled or had to reread. It has been several years, though, in the whole broad scheme, so I might be mashing them all together.
Mm.
Your latest series, I've been quite enjoying quite a bit. So,
Great. Well, I had to tackle one of Steve's characters, and that was very intimidating.
okay.
Like Krupp. I knew I could not do justice, but I had to, so I just sort of did my best, and but I knew I wasn't quite there with the cadence, so
I could see that.
oh
Don't tell Steve, but I could drop kick him Krupp out of here. I can't stand Krupp.
well. Well, everyone has their favorites, and those characters that great.
Yeah.
It's
If that's a sign of success, he wrote him well because that character grates greatly on me.
I think so. I think you have to touch the reader, and I don't sometimes not nicely.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So, interesting question. If you had free reign from any medium to write any character, which character would you write? Whose character?
Oh my God! I don't think that's in the list, is it? I don't know if I'm prepared for
Yes,
that.
it is. That's one I shared with you. Do you
Any
ever have a dream of writing a particular character or continuing a story of a character you like that never got a sequel or anything like that?
that I don't know. That would seem presumptuous to me
Nah.
in many ways. Like the real sort of like for example Robinson Crusoe.
Okay.
You know when you know back in England, for example, in London, back like how would that go? And
Sure.
maybe something like that. So the reverse fish out of water, right? We see him out of the fish out of water in thrust into another environment in his shipwreck, or actually marooning, and then you can reverse that, and now he's equally out of his environment back in London.
Right. Having to readjust somehow. That would be interesting. Robinson Crusoe and Swiss Family Robinson was a lot of the games me and my brothers and our friends would play in the woods all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm writing
And
you
I
down.
could have very well, I could have listed those
Yeah,
from my three books. You know,
sure. I'm putting you down for Robinson Crusoe.
put me down for Treasure Island.
Okay. Which which character point of view would you take?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I do like Long John Silver.
All right. We'll send the contract along shortly. No. All right, here's one of the impromptu questions. It's a first response. I'm going to read 10 words individually, and I'd like your reaction to each word. Graveyard.
An emotional response?
Whatever you first think of.
I think of autumn and walking.
Oh, okay. Watermelon.
uh, Summer, of course, but family,
Good.
very much.
Future.
Dare I say dread? Uh, um, Possibility, like, just really
Okay.
any potential. Yeah.
That's better than dread. Sandstorm.
Oh my. In a way, awe and wonder. Just what a magnificent event to witness. As long as it's not threatening you.
Right. Alert.
Alarms and excursions.
Song.
Song.
Yes.
Yeah, joy. Definitely.
Good. Whip.
Whip. Oh.
Trying to make the
Oh,
mind jump all around.
all over the place. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Hmm. Yeah, I can't think of anything there.
Okay. That's acceptable. Struggle.
Hmm. Necessity.
All right. Purple.
Purple. Yeah, that's a good color. It's one of my favorite colors.
Good.
Yeah,
And blunt.
blunt. Also sometimes necessary,
True.
you know? Often unwelcome, but sometimes necessary.
Right. That was very good. Thinking man's answers. I like that. Speaking of thinking, do you have a favorite quote, poem, motivational thought that you like, and will you share it and tell us who said it?
Hmm. I was thinking about that, and actually I don't have plaques sort of on the wall with, you know, sayings and
Okay.
although it is certainly possible to and for people to try and condense wisdom down into a couple of sentences, and I've read some of them and they've been fantastic, but I can't say that I live by any one particular aphorism
Okay.
or saying.
I'm gonna twist
But
your
if I
arm
can
though.
go if yeah if I can go on though,
Okay.
one thing that came to mind is more like little brief lessons,
Okay.
like like out of the Roman philosophy of Stoicism.
Uh huh.
There's this the lesson of the Stoic archer,
Okay.
and for writers, it's really important because what the Stoic philosopher would say is that the job of the archer is actually misunderstood by people. Because the job of the archer isn't to strike a target, it isn't to hit the target. The job of the archer is to fire as accurately as possible, to do your best job with your shot. And whether it hits the target is irrelevant. It's out of your control because you've let loose. So, like the writer, you just do the best job you can with your manuscript, and then you send it off. And whatever happens out there happens. You've got no control
Interesting.
over it. So,
Okay. Okay. I hadn't read that one before. I'm in a discussion with a friend who's reading a lot of the Stoic literature right now, and we have an ongoing conversation. He hasn't reached that one yet, or apparently, or brought it up to me. But that's a very interesting point because yes, an initial observation, we would think the point of the archer is to hit its target, whether that's the enemy or to keep the enemy away. I actually anticipated your answer to be to keep the enemy more at a distance, you know. But I like your answer. That's interesting. Render the best shot you can, and once it leaves your bow, it's out of your
you're
control.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm including a screen of the phrase, so I will look up a way to present that and share it with you before I put it in to make sure it matches what you once said. But we'll use that as your reference point. Do you have a visual artist or two that creates artwork that moves you? I have struck the word favorite here because several of the interviewers felt that favorite was too strong. That there's certain works they react to, but they wouldn't
Mm,
say something's favorite. So I'm rewording that just to say, can you give us some examples of art and the people who created them that move you?
mm. Well, you know, and I'm not up on contemporary visual art,
That's fine.
but when I think of it as a contemporary subject, the visual artists nowadays who really reach the majority of people, like millions, are the cinematographers, are the
Ah,
filmmakers,
okay.
and I think maybe they are really the sort of the visual artists that most people today, contemporary, are their work is that they're exposed to.
Sure.
And I have my favorites. I mean, I loved the cinematography from Blade Runner, for example, and that was the
Okay.
work of Deakins, I think Roger Deakins, just an amazing cinematographer. And then Villeneuve's cinematographer for Dune. Um,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Fraser, I think, was what they call the DP, the director of photography. Um, and his work was I was really impressed by. So as far as visual arts, you know, I
Yeah.
mean that's the visual. That's what I'm seeing. I'm not
Sure.
going out and I'm not looking at contemporary art that much on
Right.
the wall.
It doesn't have to be contemporary, though. I mean,
Oh,
initially people thought I was approaching this whole interview process only from the sword and sorcery spectrum, so they were a lot of Frazettas as my answer. So I want to make clear that this is not just sword and sorcery specific, but whatever art moved you. And I'm getting a lot of landscape artists. The last two people talk about landscape artists. So
mm, mm-hmm,
yeah.
mm-hmm.
Very dramatic though, that Dune photography, that was very epic presentation there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think did a really good job at getting across the epic nature of the novel itself.
All right. I forgot to give you a time counter around 25. We're at 37, so we're doing very well, and we have reached the last question. So you have 4 minutes to talk about this question if you'd like.
Oh my. Oh no. That's a challenge for me. Uh,
Well, this is the last question and the last of the ones you don't know. What are you trying to share through your writing, if anything? What do you want people to get out of what you write?
mm. Well, ultimately, as a student of literature, I think that good writing is all about the human condition.
Okay.
You know, I would agree with that. And I'm trying to get across what it means to be human. And so I hope that what readers will take away is sort of not only the highs, but the lows and the questions that we all ask ourselves that assail all characters, all people,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone's grappling with them in their own way. and I hope to show, different approaches, different ways of responding to the problems that beset all of us.
Sure. And as you guys have learned through time, I mean, we repeat our questions, we repeat our mistakes. History repeats
Yeah.
itself, and yeah.
Yeah, the same things keep coming up, and we're still struggling with them.
Do you feel people get that out of your writing? Do you feel the
I
responses
don't
are?
know. I hope so. I hope so. I hope that of course, uh, a lot of the criticism of the genre is that it's just wish fulfillment.
Right.
But I think that you can do a lot more with any art. You can, it depends what you put into it. You can really, any genre can teach, very fantastic lessons.
Mm-hmm.
It's just all about what the artist brings to it.
Mm-hmm. I was just upselling your guys' entire combined efforts to a gentleman in the store yesterday. Uh, he's a nonfiction reader who wants to expand to fiction, and he's a predominantly philosophy reader. So I said, "Hey, I've got a series for you."
Yeah, yeah. Steve's stuff would be.
Well, all of it. I think you had the particular looks at. He's the bigger picture writer, and you had the particular granular components to multiple people or units. And honestly, like I said, my first reaction to Night of Knives was cool story. But then as I read the series and your other stuff, I don't reread. I've reread three of Steve's and your book three times, and Crimson Guard, Return of the Crimson Guard once, so or
Thank you.
twice. So cool. Thank you very much for sharing all those answers. We did it in 40 minutes. That was our time.
That's me, terse.
I got a little bit more out of you.
You did, you did. Yes.
So now is your opportunity to tell us three C's. Something cold you'd like a little bit more attention on, something current, and something coming if you're willing to share something a little bit in the 2025 area.
Mm. Oh, okay. So I didn't know that something cold meant a work that I thought was what you mean deserving of more attention. Um,
Sorry, yeah, that's what I meant, but what did you take it as?
oh, I thought you meant sort of the last work that I had done, which was packed and done.
Oh, no, I'd like to, a little attention brought to something you think isn't getting very much attention anymore or didn't get enough at all.
Oh, um, yeah. Um, well, I in the fantasy genre,
Okay.
um, I would certainly like to see attention return to Fritz Leiber and his Fafhrd in the Grey Mouser series.
Okay.
I think that that's deserving of more attention and shouldn't be allowed to sort of drop away
Yeah.
from the lists.
Did you know that Nathan Long has been granted by the state to continue the stories?
Well, we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Have you heard of the magazine Tales from the Magician's Skull at all?
No, no, I'm sorry.
He had, I know there's been one story published, and the possibility of a second one or a second one's coming. I don't remember exactly, but Nathan Long is continuing that. I appreciate that, but I actually mean something cold of yours personally.
uh, um, well, then, I guess we can return to Night of Knives because I think that
Hmm.
uh, it can serve in a lot of ways. I think potentially it can serve as an entree to the world. It can serve as a sort of a primer and other preview of what's to come. And for the series as a whole and the world as
Right,
a whole. I would that's one of the jobs that I was sort of hoping it might serve.
right. Was there an uptick in it at all, in readers of it or buyers of it when the current series came out? I would have sort of thought people who started this would want to go read that.
Mm. I think in the ebook,
Okay,
there's been an uptick
okay.
for generally across the board for Steve. stuff and mine. A lot more ebook sales,
Huh. I
more
think,
more more recently.
okay. All right. Something current, either you're currently working on or has currently come out.
Mm. Yes, well, I've been working on for last while the next in the series of Paths to Descendancy, and it's coming along. Um, and I'm trying something different, so it's going to be it's been a challenge, but
Okay.
I think I can pull it off. I think I can pull it off.
Now, is this the ultimate? Is this the end of this series? Is it 5 books
There'll be
or? Okay.
one more after this,
Okay.
yeah, and that's coming. Yeah, that'll be it as far as I know. I don't know if I'll return to the world after that.
Ah, okay. Any titles on these you can reveal or not yet?
Well, I have a working title, but as I said, sometimes I get into fights with
Yeah.
Bantam. And but for now, I have a working title, which is for the current work, which is The Last Champion.
Okay. Makes us think of someone in particular, but I won't put you on the spot. All right. Any chance that there will be a cover in time for when this goes live? Do you think?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I don't.
All right.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, but
It's quite all right.
that's just the right now the queue is pretty long at the publishers.
Ooh. Okay. All right. But I would imagine they're pestering you though, right, for this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, you sort of alluded to there's something that's not fantasy. So what are you working on that's not fantasy?
Yeah, I've also always been dabbling in science fiction,
Okay.
my time is taken up by fantasy. However, I might be freed up and I've been
Sure.
working on a science fiction title and work for some time, and I'd like to kick it forward. Uh, but I always feel guilty when I take time aside to do that.
Uh,
Um,
Understood. But we'll look forward to it. Cam, I totally appreciate you hanging out with us for this roughly 50 minutes. I appreciate all your thorough answers.
well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for the invite.
Of course. I look forward to sharing your work with many other people.
Yeah, and keep up the good fight with fantasy publishing.
Try it. It's a long road. I'm going to work on my own writing though. All right. I want to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Esslemont, for letting us get to know the life, universe, and everything you. For the second time in this first season of 24 and 42, I skipped a question during the interview, only this time with a legit guest. Thankfully, Cam did not hesitate to help me rectify this by sharing via email what he fears most among the options I presented him. My sincere thanks to Cameron Esslemont for sitting down with me to cap a terrific season number 1 here at 24 and 42. He definitely shared his life, universe, and everything as we discussed his writing inspirations, challenges, worlds, and hopes. Personally, he is an author who joins an elite few on my shelves, one whom I have reread. I am grateful to add this conversation to the several we've previously enjoyed. Please check out all of his writing and give his work some reading and reviewing love. Until next time, this was 24 in 42.